Ladies and gentlemen.
How is everybody tonight? We are fine. We are fine.
Yeah.
And once again, here we are. This is the Bunny Rabbit's Hole. This is a podcast hosted by myself. I am Jason.
And I am Craig.
Yes, and what the Bunny Rabbit's Hole is, if this is your first time being here, what we do is every week we pick a central theme, and then we talk about that theme, and every time something inspires us to talk about something else, or our opinions inspire us, or a fact inspires us to go down a Bunny Rabbit's Hole, as you will, we'll talk about that for a little bit until it finally comes to a conclusion, or Craig finally gets tired and he wants to talk about the theme again to try to put the show back on its rails. So,
right.
With that, Craig.
Well, also, as you know, we pick, like he said, we pick a theme, and during the week we research the theme, and we research both sides of the theme, not just what fits our opinion. But since this is entertainment, we take both those facts, throw them in there, and also throw our opinions in there as well, because it's our show, and that's what we do.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And we do, from time to time, say something that may be considered controversial, maybe something outside of your opinion basis, your fact basis, but we try to present everything where we do take sides on a lot of things, because we do have opinions, because we're Americans, we can have opinions, and your opinions might not line up with our opinions, but that is fine. And if you find that your opinions are the fact that you are offended by what you're about to hear or did hear on here, please just go away.
Yeah, to sum up what he just said, if you're easily offended, fuck off.
Exactly. This is entertainment. It is done for the people that like this type of entertainment, and we hope you like this type of entertainment, but if this is not your cup of brandy, then go back to your cocoa.
Right.
So
now,
what are we talking about this week, Craig?
This week, we are talking about the history of Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. You know,
yes.
Thanksgiving is one of those holidays when I was young I loved. Why? Because I loved turkey. And right. I love turkey, and I love to eat turkey, and I love stuffing, and I love covering it in gravy, and I love turkey and turkey and turkey. And then to quote the great Mitch Hedberg, it's like, turkeys, just be yourself. You don't have to be turkey bologna, turkey pastrami, turkey hot dogs. Turkey, just be yourself. And eventually I just got burnt out on turkey, so I kind of got burnt out on Thanksgiving.
Right. Well, also, when you and I were kids, and yeah, Jason and I are related, our families for Thanksgiving, we would get together, and it wasn't just eat food and watch football. We played games. We played like spoons. Our cousin Miranda, who wasn't even playing, got a concussion while we were playing spoons. But we played out. Yep. But so for us, it was a time, not just a time of getting together, but a time of playing and just enjoying each other's company.
Right. And it was really, Thanksgiving was one of those times where it was kind of the beginning of the holiday season for our families. And what would end up happening was we would see each other occasionally for like open houses or birthdays, something like that. But generally at the end of summer, when school started, none of our family really saw each other until Thanksgiving. There was a time period where we would all get together for Halloween, but as we got a little bit older, the logistics of bringing everybody to a central location for one night that was on a Thursday just didn't make any sense. So we really didn't see each other from about the time that school would start, around Labor Day, which we used to go camping on Labor Day. Right. And there's a bunch of stories about that. We actually mentioned a story in one of our other episodes around Halloween about scaring the piss out of one of our cousins during one of those camping trips. But we didn't see each other from, basically the end of August, beginning of September until, the third Thursday of November.
Right.
So, we always
Fourth
like
Thursday.
What's that?
And you're frozen.
Oh, yeah, right.
You froze for a second.
Fourth Thursday. Correct. Fourth. Yes.
Pros. There you go. You're moving again.
All right.
Okay, so anyways, we are going to basically the format of this one is we're going to talk about the what we learned in history in school, and all the cookie cutter Disney version of Thanksgiving, and then maybe we'll progress into something a little bit controversial.
Yeah. What would that
Imagine
be? So,
that.
all right. So, starting off with Thanksgiving, we we should probably kind of talk about what is the roots of American Thanksgiving, what we know of as Thanksgiving today.
Correct.
So, as we know, we just discussed, it is the fourth Thursday of November, and it was originally a harvest festival, and then it had been celebrated on and off since that 1789 with the proclamation of George Washington after request from Congress, which is kind
Right.
of a weird thing that the government would actually come in and say, you know what, let's celebrate a day of eating turkey.
Well, the reason they did that though is because they were having several different, numerous different Thanksgiving days throughout the year to celebrate a war victory or something like that.
So
So
they consolidated it into a
so
federal holiday.
George said, "I only want one day of this crap." And Congress said, "We're with you. We're sick of it."
Okay. But then, like, Thomas Jefferson chose not to observe the holiday, so a lot of people didn't
Right.
observe this particular holiday. And then it was kind of intermittent until the presidency of Abraham Lincoln, when Thanksgiving became a federal holiday in 1863 during the American Civil War.
Right.
And then he called it a national day of thanksgiving and praise to our benevolent Father who dwelleth in the heavens. So
Right.
even then, Lincoln kind of made it a religious.
Right. Well, and also he had some motives behind that. He was trying to, put something bright into a dark time that they were in.
Yeah, well, we're not gonna. There's no disputing that the American Civil War was a very dark time in our country.
So he was just trying to lighten it up a little bit and see if he could boost morale of people and say, "Hey, remember the Thanksgiving thing? We're doing it every year now. If you don't like it, no shit, it's still going to be there." And then Walmart said, "We don't like it. We're going to be open."
And then we're going to go, you know what? At 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving, we're going to have everybody work. You're not going to be able to eat turkey. You're not going to be able to take that nap. And then you're going to work, and then we're going to have cheap electronics. And make people wait in line.
Fall apart. All right. Anyways, back on track. So, yep, like you said, Abe did that. And then Thanksgiving over the years kind of evolved from just sitting down and having a feast to what we have now, which are parades, and football games, and people getting together, usually getting drunk. And there's always going to be a family that has arguments and fights and shit like that.
Well, yeah, that goes with that. And I actually saw. I'm going through my notes trying to find it, but I can't at the moment. Thanksgiving is actually the more DUIs, driving while under the influence, are handed out on Thanksgiving than any other day of the year.
Oh wow! I would have thought it'd be.
You'd think it'd be like New Year's
or the night before, which is the biggest party day of the year for college students.
That too. They're all getting drunk and they're gonna, go home and be hungover for Thanksgiving because everybody sleeps in Thanksgiving, so you can kind of get away with it.
Right. Well, and it's like we've touched on in other podcasts, like with Halloween. We don't just celebrate the day, but we also celebrate the night before.
Right. Yes, exactly. Thanksgiving has actually become, as we'll go into more about the whole thing about, we're just kind of doing the glossing over the traditions and stuff like that. But a couple of other interesting facts about it is that in 2015, and as estimated 276 million Americans dining on festive poultry, spending an estimated or an expected 1.05 billion dollars on turkeys for
Oh,
Thanksgiving.
man.
That is
That's
$1 billion on turkeys for one day. One dish for all of America is worth $1 billion to that
crazy.
end.
Well, they could have just headed down to Cincinnati and back when WKRP was in session and
Yeah.
just hang out in the streets while Les Nessman threw out of helicopters.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
Yep. I
Still
love that episode.
was still one of my favorite episodes of sitcom television anywhere is the WKRP Thanksgiving turkey giveaway episode.
The only other episode of a show in that time period that rivals that would be Bernie Miller when the old Abe would go to fish got high.
Oh, yes.
I don't know.
I do, yes. Yeah. Now I've seen the what episode, what channel was that on? It was like Hulu for a while had WKRP on there. I went back and watched that episode. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was Hulu. I saw it somewhere.
Right.
But yeah, I laughed just as hard today as I did when I was a kid.
Right.
But there's more contemporary one. There's a great Friends episode where they're all trapped. They all were supposed to go to somebody else's house, their parents' house and all that other stuff, but they weren't. Their travel plans all got destroyed, so eventually they all ended up having dinner together. But there's a great part in that where the character Joey got a modeling gig, and it was for the Center for Disease Control or the New York Department of Health.
Oh, yeah.
And he gets put on this billboard that it says what Mario wasn't telling you, and it was our anti-herpes ad, and his face was on there. Well, his mom wouldn't let him come home because she thought he had herpes.
Right.
So there's and then there's the traditional. That's when you see there's the Peanuts, the Charlie Brown Christmas or Thanksgiving special where they all eat popcorn. And now Thanksgiving is a day that you start seeing Christmas specials.
I'm already seeing Christmas specials.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even.
Yeah, I walked into. My stepson works at a Walmart, and I walked in there.
It's capitalism at its finest.
Yeah, he's wearing or he's got reindeer antlers on his hat. He's already wearing Christmas stuff.
Yeah.
So, but
yeah.
So, like you mentioned before, there's some other traditions. Like you mentioned the parade. Now, the Macy's department store has been putting on a parade in New York City that has been broadcast on NBC every year. They started the parade in 1924, and it's been on TV every year since 1979. But with this, that was used to be the symbolic beginning of Christmas, because the very last float in the Macy's parade was Santa Claus. And when Santa came through, you could go to Macy's and see Santa from that point on. And that used to be the beginning of the Christmas season. Now it kind of is, because it's the beginning of Thanksgiving is really the unofficial beginning of Black Friday, which is the next day, which is the single largest shopping day of the year.
Right, which I avoid like the plague.
Oh, I do too.
Because there's nothing I need bad enough to wait in a line in the cold and then fight with some old lady for.
Exactly. So I made a venture out once. So I went over to I live over in the greater Portland, Oregon area, and I crossed the river I live in Washington, but I crossed the river into Portland, and I was going to go to a Best Buy. Now, there's one particular Best Buy is down by it's the old one that used to be by the airport, and it used to be right next to a Home Depot. So I come pulling around the corner and see that the entire Home Depot parking lot is full. However, Home Depot is not open. Everybody in that parking lot was there for Best Buy. So I jumped across the river. They had built a brand new one.
Huh.
They built a brand new Best Buy over in Vancouver, and I thought, oh, well, not many people know about that one. So I drive over there. It took me about 10 minutes to get to this one. I go in front, and what do I see? There are RVs parked in the parking lot, and by the time I got there, people are already wheeling out flat carts full of electronics. I'm like, I'm not getting in the store. There's still people lined up outside. Everything that was advertised for sale is gone. So I went home.
Oh. Yeah, it's not worth it to me. I mean, I prefer Cyber Monday.
I do too. I do too.
I'd rather.
I get everything that I need online, and it's funny because it gets shipped right to where I want it to go.
Yeah. I mean, back to Thanksgiving this year. We are actually going to Marquette, to where my son is in college, and he's hosting us for Thanksgiving this year.
Oh, nice.
So we're driving 6 hours up to Marquette. My wife and I got a hotel room. We're leaving the kids with him. And so we're going to be up there for, I think, 2 nights. And then, because I think we're going up Wednesday. And then coming home Friday. Then Saturday, I've got an art show that I'm selling crap at. So at some point in there, having a Thanksgiving with my family down here, too.
Oh, nice. So, yeah, like last year, I'm probably going to do the same as I did last year. I went down and met my brother and his girlfriend at their house, and then we walked down to, there's a little tavern right around the corner, and I ate an omelet.
That's a lovely Thanksgiving meal there.
It was awesome. I loved every bite of that Denver.
Right. So anyways, as our history books teach us, the Pilgrims came over on the Mayflower and established a colony in Plymouth, which is in Massachusetts, at Plymouth Rock. And they were met by this Native American named Squanto of the Wampanoag tribe.
Right.
And so they were all real friendly and everybody loved each other. And Squanto taught them how to fish, how to plant corn, and how to do stuff. And then they decided that at the end of the harvest season, they were all going to have this big feast and invite, the Native Americans in. So the Wampanoag tribe come in, and they brought 5 deers. The governor had sent 5 guys out to go fowl hunting, and so they could bring back some birds. It's never actually said whether or not they had turkey.
Right. All the research that I found said it was more than likely a pheasant or duck that they'd ate.
Right.
It wasn't actually.
But it was a 3-day. Yeah. So they had a 3-day feast. Everything was hunky dory. Everybody loved each other. Am I hamming it up too much?
No. It was just, it was a fun, loving festival of 2 different cultures meshing together to plant corn with fish.
And
so let's go. Okay. So we're being very sarcastic, very facetious about all this because obviously there's something there that the history books didn't really tell us. Okay, there's a lot there that the history books didn't tell us, but where do you want to begin?
There's a history version, and then there's the Native American version.
Yes.
And I think the truth lies somewhere in between the 2.
Correct.
So we will go with the history book version for now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let's roll back just a little bit in time. So we have this 3-day festival that we're going to get to. So let's roll back the timeline just a little bit and talk about, because we have to put these dates out there because they're very important. So the first date we're going to throw out there was the Harvest Feast of 1621. That is what most people refer to as when this first Thanksgiving took place. So I want to rewind just a little bit.
Right. It was actually in October.
Okay. So I want to rewind a little bit and let's talk about the Pilgrims for a minute. So
okay.
Most of the people believe, okay, the Pilgrims come over here because they were being persecuted for their religion. They wanted to come over here, be able to worship freely and start a new life with everything. But the problem was they weren't being persecuted for their religious beliefs in their homeland. They actually had, like a lot of them came from Holland, they actually had religious freedom in Holland. So what they really wanted to do was come over here and create, okay, here, I found my notes here. The Pilgrims had religious freedom in Holland, where they first arrived in the 17th century, like those who settled in Jamestown, Virginia in 1607. The Pilgrims came to North America to make money. That's why they came here. They wanted money. It had nothing to do with God. And they didn't call themselves pilgrims.
Well, they also... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, they actually came, whereas they try to create a, I'm trying to find the word here. God damn it. Okay, they came over here to make and establish a religious theocracy. So they didn't want to live under the umbrella of somebody else being in charge of the religion. They wanted to come here and they wanted to have complete control over it and make wealth. They didn't refer to themselves as pilgrims because pilgrims were like those in Muslims or the Crusaders, the people that travel somewhere for religious beliefs. They were separatists. They were leaving that part of their church and coming over here and starting a new one. So it's closer to Martin Luther nailing the Protestant Reformation on the door to the church as it was to, Harriet Tubman in the Underground Railroad. So they were more like trying to start their own thing as opposed to coming over here and, we're trying to be free. No, you weren't. So now
well, also, no, go ahead.
Oh, no. So I was going to say so now that we've established that the Pilgrims weren't these innocent, loving little, hippies that came over here, so that they could, make macrame and live in yurts. They come over here to be in control of the religion, and they came over here because they had capitalist beliefs. So they weren't super nice people.
Right.
So that's the side of the Pilgrims that I wanted people to understand a little bit as we go forward.
I'd like to add to that a little bit.
Sure.
Because you're right. They didn't come here looking for religious freedom. Their claim was they were on a journey for purity, and they wanted to live their version of the Bible. And I say their version because every religion has their own version of the Bible. There's like 17,000 translations of it, and blah blah blah.
Exactly.
But they wanted to live the Bible's word to a T. That was their claim, and they wanted to go where, like you said, it wasn't about religious freedom; it was about control.
Yes.
So, Yeah, that was a little bit more on it that I had found. And yeah, you're right. They were separatists. They were also Calvinists. They were a mixed bag.
Right, and let's just talk about that for a second. You can't live the Bible to a T because there's so much contradiction in it.
Mm-hmm.
Those that say that they can or want to are really full of themselves because there's so much contradiction.
Right. Well, they're basically what really comes down to is they were religious zealots.
Yes.
They were so hardcore in their belief that nobody else's beliefs would ever match up to theirs. And to kind of talk about what a religious zealot is, basically a religious zealot is somebody who is so into religion that they just become crazy and obsessed with it.
Absolutely obsessed with it.
Whereas that's where you get your mass shooting like that.
And that's where we're talking that they were the type of people that wouldn't, like today we see it now where they won't take their child to a doctor because God will heal this ailment. But if they just went to a doctor and with their $10 copay, they would get a pill that would clear this up and their child would live a happy and healthy life. But instead they don't, and their child ends up dying. And then they don't understand why the government is coming down on them for child neglect and homicide, or at least manslaughter for this. So those are the type of people that we're talking about that the Pilgrims were. I'm not saying all of them, but the people that were in charge were.
Right. So, yeah. So, I mean, that's a little bit into the controversial side of it. Are we still sticking with the cookie cutter one yet?
Well,
yes, actually, something else I want to touch on first before we go into the actual first documented Thanksgiving services were actually conducted by Spaniard French in the 16th century. So, like basically 100 years before this happened.
Right.
And Thanksgiving is something that at that time was common in many different cultures and religions. It was, they had a good harvest, so they're giving thanks for it, or they won a battle, so they're giving thanks for it. It was a thing that many cultures did at the time.
Yeah. So we won't have to do the cookie cutter bullshit anymore. So going back to the freedom of religious thing, they actually, the Plymouth colonists actually referred to the New World as the Holy Kingdom. And they were never concerned about freedom of religion for anyone but themselves. If you were free to have religion as long as it was theirs. And then probably everybody's heard of the name Cotton Mather. He's a big name that's in a lot of this shit. But he was a sermon. His name was Cotton Mather. But in 1623, he was Mather the Elder, and he praised God for the smallpox epidemic that wiped out the majority of the Indians that they were living on the same land with.
Right. He said God cleansed the land for them.
The chiefly destruction of chiefly young men and children, the very seeds of the increase, thus clearing the way that they cleared the forest to make way for a better growth.
Right.
Now, this smallpox epidemic was something too that well, I had it here somewhere. So back to before the colonists got here, in the 1600s, there was before Columbus came over and didn't actually land in America, he landed somewhere down in the Caribbean.
Right.
But there were multiple ship captain's logs that went up and down the actual colony's coast shortly before and after Columbus came over. But one of the things that they went on to say was they estimated that the pre-contact Americans were as high as 112 million. So the Native Americans that lived here were nearly about 1/3 of the total population that we have in the United States now actually lived in America before Columbus came over.
Oh,
Shortly after that,
wow.
by 1650, that number had dwindled down to about 6 million. So there's a bunch of undocumented landings that had to have happened between Columbus and when the Pilgrims came here. So if they had 112 million people living here, that means that there was plenty of areas that were cleared out. They had villages, they had tribes, and one documented case, ship's captain's log, actually said that the coastline was just nothing but fires all the way down it. It was just lit up like we'd have street lights today. There's nothing but fires. So there was tons and tons of people that lived in. Back then, they didn't have ways of transporting stuff. So of that 112 million, they all had to live near water.
Yeah.
Some sort. So most of them probably lived right on the coast of the Atlantic. Well,
right.
So these people had to have gotten off the boats and met them and probably brought disease and pestilence with them and wiped these people out. So when our people came over, our settlers came over, they didn't have it as hard as you really thought, because when they went in there, it's like, hey, that clear spot with those buildings would be a good spot to start a village, don't you think? Yeah, right. Let's move into that.
Right. Yeah, it's like, hey, look, and because them being religious zealots, look, God built us a village.
Exactly. So it wasn't, they weren't, I'm not going to call them stupid, but these coincidences that happened to help our early settlers actually make a living and thrive here actually was due to a bunch of unfortunate events that happened to the people that already lived here. So
right.
Had that not happened, we probably wouldn't have been able to settle the land as well as we did. So poor Native Americans, and I don't feel that.
And if you're Native American, you're probably going, damn.
Yeah.
So a little bit more about these pilgrims that came over on the Mayflower. Okay, they had left England and went to Holland. And then from Holland, they came to basically Cape Cod and Plymouth Rock and settled. There was 100 people on this boat, and they weren't the type of people you would expect to go out and try to establish a colony. They were older, they were weak, they weren't soldiers, there were women and children, there was even some pregnant women. There was 100 people on this boat, and only, I believe, it was a 66-day cruise, and half of them died. And when they first got there, for the very first winter, they spent the entire winter on the Mayflower and were subject to all these different diseases and shit like that. And then in spring, they settled into the land. So, but, they weren't the type of people that you would think would go out to settle a colony, because, they weren't like warriors. They weren't, military people or anything like that. They were just regular Joes.
Right. When you compare that to, okay, we're taking all these people, we're going to go start a village there. Compare, the weak, the meek, and the feeble that were on this boat. Now take that to all the applications of the people that NASA has gotten for us to go to Mars. They've known that they have to have a couple of mechanics. They have to have a doctor. They have to have a couple of engineers. They have to have, it's also like going back to role playing. When you build a party, you have to have somebody has to play a cleric and somebody has to play a thief. Not everybody can play a fighter because there's other things that have to happen when you're in an adventure. So there's roles to fill. You know, I'm sorry, Grandma Prudence isn't putting up, a 20-foot beam across the top of a house.
Right.
So they didn't have enough tradespeople. They didn't have so it wasn't a very well thought out plan.
Right.
It's not like it's not like the Joker when he was I love when a plan comes together. This plan just happened to not kill everybody.
Right. And was it Bradford? What's his first name? William Bradford. Yep. He was 18 when they first started this journey, and he became a leader once they reached the new land, the America. And he he was kind of fucked up. I can't think of a better way to put it. But it was him, and then there was somebody else who became the governor. They elected a governor before they even made it to land. And I don't remember if it was William Bradford that became the governor or somebody else. Because there was somebody else with a similar name that when all the shady shit went down. But anywho, so they get there, and from these people came to land, and the Native Americans were curious about them, so they camped around them, knowing that they outnumbered them, just to see what they were going to do. And then Squanto, who was enslaved in England for several years, and then escaped and came back to America in like 1616.
Yeah, it was 16, he was enslaved from 1614 to 1619.
Okay, and then he came back in 1620 before the Pilgrims got there. Got back in was the Wampanoag tribe, even though he wasn't, was Potox or something like that.
Yes.
And what he basically did is he became the translator between the Pilgrims and the Native Americans, and he established a peace treaty between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag tribe, and like we said earlier, taught them how to fish, how to catch eels, how to trap, how to plant corn, all the good shit, because these people had no fucking clue what they were doing.
Right. Like we said, Grandma Prudence doesn't know how to fish.
Right. So Squanto, basically, in my mind, Squanto's a big fucking traitor to his people. Because this guy was a slave in fucking England.
Yes.
He knew what these motherfuckers were all about, and yet he's trying to make peace with them and stuff like this. And then a couple years later, what happens? The whole tribe gets slaughtered.
Right. But that wasn't the first issue that he had seen with this, because when he came back, he had come back and seen that almost his entire tribe, not the Wampanoag, is that who they were? His tribe.
No, his tribe was it begins with a P. I can't.
Okay, but he found most of them decimated with smallpox when he came back. So he already knew that the Pilgrims, or not necessarily the Pilgrims, the white men, the settlers, the foreigners that coming into their land are bringing bad shit with them. And what had happened when he came back, he found that most of his tribe was decimated by smallpox, and then somehow he ends up hanging out with Samoset and his chief or his people, and then he went on to help do exactly what you said. So yes, he should have been he should have warned Samoset and not create a treaty with him. Right.
He was.
And Samoset was
actually he was. I'm gonna slaughter this. He was a Patuxet Indian.
Yeah.
It's Patuet.
Yes.
And not only did his tribe wiped out, but the rest of his tribe were enslaved as well, were captured and taken over as slaves.
Yes.
Okay. So there we go. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, so
the Pequot name.
So the fact that he should have been the he had the chance and the opportunity to be the hero to the indigenous tribesmen and women that live there and say, hey, don't help them. If they live on their own
Right.
and they come to you, then that's cool. But they bring death. That's not God.
Right.
It's not Quetzalcoatl, or I don't know all the Native American I know Quetzalcoatl's a South American, like Aztec god, but I'm trying to think of as one of their deities, but I can't right now, so I'm sorry.
Not Grandmother Earth.
Yeah. So they bring death and destruction. He should have warned them. He didn't. And then, so I kind of agree with you that he kind of bitched out he was kind of a bitch to his own people.
Yeah. And, because he also knew about their, he did establish a peace treaty, but like I said earlier, it didn't last long.
Right.
Because the next Thanksgiving that was celebrated, and this is when the new governor took over. I can't remember his name, but anywho, they went up to, I believe it was the Wampanoag tribe, and then they had them there's 700 people. They had them stay in this longhouse, 700 Native Americans, and pre-dawn, the English and the Dutch mercenaries that came over with the pilgrims stood outside the building, ordered them all to come out. Now, it was just the men that came out. So the men, every man that came out was either shot or bludgeoned to death with a club. And at that point, the women and children are hiding inside the building, cowering in fear. So they set the building on fire and burned them all alive. And the next day, the governor says, he declares today National Thanksgiving because of this great epic war or, battle we just won, which was just a slaughter of innocent people. So when they say, hey, we want to live a path to purity, their purity is basically genocide.
Right. Which is a lot of is really the foundation on what empires are built on. Is anything that's seen as a threat to you, you innocently slaughter them.
Right. Kind of like some certain caravan that's traveling from South America.
Right.
Sorry, I got off track there. That's not being talked about anymore now that the elections are over, oddly.
It's kind of weird, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of them, the caravan, probably shot up that building in California.
Right. Even though they're months away.
But
and they started the wildfire too. That's being mismanaged, so they cut funds.
Right.
Because it's a national forest, federally controlled.
Right. Exactly. So now there's a big myth about Thanksgiving that Thanksgiving is a happy time. Well, just like where we just went off on a little anti-Trump rant right there, there are two sides to every point of view. Now, where in battle, you always believe that you're on the side of good. But the point of the side of being good is all through the perspective of the person who's doing the fighting. So you may be, if one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So one thing about happiness that we refer to here growing up is, Thanksgiving is a happy time. You bring your family together. You get to watch the Lions lose. You get to watch the Chicago Bears and the Dallas Cowboys, play football. Now that there's a third game, but Thanksgiving is traditionally a fun, happy time, unless, of course, you're Native American, because Thanksgiving is a time of mourning for remembering how a gift of generosity was rewarded with a theft of land, land and seed corn, extermination of them from disease and gun, and near total destruction of more than forced assimilation. And currently celebrated in this country, Thanksgiving is a bitter reminder of 500 years of betrayal returned for friendship. So once again, we're not trying to downplay if you want to go have some turkey on, this coming November, but just kind of put a little thing in the back of your head that this, have a little bit of, something right here in your chest that says, hey, Thanksgiving. I remember what they did, even if you're not from Holland or from England or from whatever, that there was some bad shit that went on. Like they always say, behind every fortune is a person with a gun. So with that, just remember this Thanksgiving, shed a tear, just like the Native American in that Coke ad or that recycling ad, the litter ad. When he turns and he's crying, it wasn't just about us coming over here and turning this great country into a fucking shit heap. It has a lot more to do with it was once a beautiful place.
Yes.
And we're like parasites and we came over and fucked it all up. So,
and the thing is it didn't just stop at that slaughter. After that slaughter, then they went out and they attacked village after village, and any women and children that were over 14 were sold into slavery. Everybody else was murdered. There would be boats with 500 slaves that were continuously shipped out, and the governor put bounties on Indian scalps to promote as many deaths as possible. And then the church announced another day of Thanksgiving for slaughtering more innocent lives. And during their feasting, the heads of Indians were kicked through the streets like soccer balls. And then they turned on the Wampanoag tribe and they cut the chief's head off and put it on a pike and displayed it for 24 fucking years.
Oh, damn.
Now, I get a little upset about this because I do have some Native American Indian blood in me. You wouldn't know it by looking at me, but my great-grandfather was full-blooded Cherokee, and I am disgusted by this, and I think I'd be disgusted by this even if I didn't have that blood in me.
Right, which I am disgusted by all this.
But, I mean, these people taught you how to live in this world. So what do? We'll cut your head off and display it for 24 fucking years. How can you justify that? What is your line of thinking behind that?
Right. That's part and parcel for a lot of religious thinking is that if you don't, and it's not much unlike what the Republicans are doing in our country right now. If you don't believe exactly how I believe, then you're a lesser human being than I am. Therefore, right. I can fuck you up and do whatever I want. And human decency and morality and other things that are supposed to go along with the Bible just don't apply to these type of people, because it has nothing to do with faith. It has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with the fundamental principle of American greed.
Right. It's ego and power.
Yes. Now, something that I thought was kind of cool was the in the early 20th century, there was a movement by the American Association for the Advancement of Atheism. They opposed the celebration of Thanksgiving Day, and they offered an alternative observance called Blainsgiving Day. That this was in their eyes, was quote here, a protest against the divine negligence to be observed each year on Thanksgiving Day on the assumption for that the day only that God exists. So,
all right, repeat that. 'Cause
okay,
I didn't catch all of that.
okay. It is a protest against divine negligence to be observed each year on Thanksgiving on the assumption for that day only that God exists.
So that day only, God, the atheists believe in God.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But it wasn't it wasn't to say that they believe in God. It was this was a day that we did all this shit in the name of God. That for this day they'll believe in God because that they can ridicule those that did this shit for on that one day. Because otherwise you wouldn't do it. You can't. It's hard to disallow or disavow something if you don't actually believe it in the first place. So if God did this, then you kind of have to believe in God to to blame God for it.
Right.
So this one day they'll disallow their belief of not believing just so that they can believe to tell those people to go fuck themselves.
Right. Just basically saying, hey, you're a bunch of fucking hypocrites.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that in today's that's stupid. Today's times, that people are going more towards calling them evangelicals than Christians, because evangelicals is closer to zealot than Christians. Because a true Christian would not follow the Republicans, would not even follow the Democrats, because neither side do anything that has any sort of moral values.
Oh, none whatsoever. None whatsoever.
And to say you're a Christian and you can follow all this stuff where you put kids in cages, where, you're having extramarital affairs, I'm not just talking about Trump, I'm talking about Clinton, all these people. You can't sit there and support these people and still claim to be a Christian, because in God's eyes, you're basically, in your God's eyes, you're basically enabling these people, supporting these people, and not living a godly life, because you're doing everything you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to judge people, but yet here you are judging Mexicans, judging immigrants, judging transgender people, judging homosexuals and all this other shit, but you claim to be a godly person. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
And see, and that's what we talked about before, that you can't actually live the Bible to its fullest. You can't live it to to the letter of the law, is what these people, the separatists / pilgrims try to do. And that you just, to sum what you said up there, you can't live like this, like the Bible says, if you're going to judge people when the Bible itself says, he who without sin cast the first stone.
Or judge not, lest ye be judged.
Yeah, exactly. There's a bunch of those in there throughout it. So if you're going to live pious, then you better fucking not judge. And all I hear out of some of the Christians or evangelicals, whatever you want to call them, nutcases, that I know are some of the most judgmental people I ever met. And this was pointed out to me at one point in time too, like the little Christian fish that's on the back of people's cars. Anytime you see one of those on the back of a car, that fucker can't drive worth a shit. And it's true. God is not your co-pilot. Get your fucking hands off your phone, look at the goddamn road, and go straight. Go the goddamn speed limit. Fucking.
Right. All right. Well, not only that, go back to your contradictory things in the Bible. You have your, turn the other cheek, but yet an eye for an eye.
Right. There's the dichotomy of bullshit that's in that book.
Right. All right. So back to Thanksgiving, because that was a deep, dark hole we went down.
So on multiple occasions on this podcast, we have expressed not necessarily a hatred for religion, but it's more or less an opinion that a lot of people justify bad behavior using religion as a shield.
Right. They hide behind it.
Yes, and that's really when we're. So if you're listening to this and you're like, "Oh, you guys are just fucking assholes to the religion," no, it's like we're just pointing out the fact that if you're gonna live the life, live the life.
Right.
I did grow up Catholic, and I am so disgusted by all of the abuse that has happened and been systematically swept under the rug for centuries. This isn't a recent thing. This had to have been going way back. And you know what? I've actually joked about it before. I was like, I almost wish I was, so I could have got a lot of fucking money out of those motherfuckers and help shut the goddamn church down.
Right.
But apparently I wasn't cute enough as an altar boy.
Well, and lost train of thought. But yeah, I mean, to kind of touch on that though, I have friends that are Christians, and they're good people. And I don't knock them for what they believe, because they don't sit around there and say, oh, they don't hide behind their Christianity. They know they make faults. They know, but they still try to live a good life. These other people like that. Let's just throw this bitch out there, Kim Davis from whatever fucking state who would issue the license to the homosexuals trying to get married.
Oh, right.
Who lost her position. But, this bitch is out there judging everybody, but she's been married 4 fucking times.
Right. You want to know why you're married 4 fucking times, bitch? Because you're fat and you're ugly and you're a cunt. That's why. Nobody fucking likes you. And you put on a show from people to suck them in, and then they realize more than likely they finally woke up from a 2-year-long binge on coke and heroin and Jack Daniels, and woke up and go, oh my god, I'm fucking married to that? Jesus Christ, no, let's get me the fuck out of here. I'm sober. This is my moment of clarity.
Right.
And they dumped your ass 4 fucking times. You went through that shit, fucking whore bag. That and
all right, we're away.
Okay, let's go back to Thanksgiving. So
let's go back to the slaughter of innocents. I mean, Thanksgiving.
So now, one thing I wanted to throw out here in this, because we talked about how Squanto was enslaved. He worked as a slave for 5 years, and he was I think it was Spain that he was taken to. So we're not just going to blame all the English for this. The Spaniards were assholes back then too.
Oh yeah, they all were.
But
hey, can I interrupt you real quick? Yeah. The Peanut Gallery just gave me this thing. It's a post on Facebook by the Conscious Kid, and it relies to us. And I want to read it real quick so I can give her phone back.
Oh yeah.
It says, the hashtag Thanksgiving myth has done so much damage and harm to the cultural self-esteem of generations of Indian people, including myself. By perpetuating negative and harmful images to both young Indians and non-Indian minds, there are so many things wrong with the happy celebration that takes place in elementary schools and its association to American Indian culture. Compromised integrity, stereotyping, and cultural misappropriation are 3 examples. When children are young, they are often exposed to antiquated images of American Indians through cartoons, books, and movies. But Thanksgiving reenactments may be their most active personal encounter with Indian America. However, poorly imagined, and many American children associate Thanksgiving actions and images with Indian culture for the rest of their lives. These cultural misunderstandings and stereotypical images perpetuate historical inaccuracy. Tolerance of mockery by teachers is great concern to hashtag Native parents. Much harm has been done to generations of hashtag Indian people by perpetuating negative and harmful images in young minds. Many natives, particularly in New England area, remember the attempted genocide as a factual part of their history and are reminded each year during the modern Thanksgiving. The United American Indians of New England meet each year at Plymouth Rock on Coles Hill for a day of mourning. They gather at the feet of a statue of Grand Sachem Massasoit. Basically, that was the king whose head was put on a pike.
Oh, right.
Of the hashtag Wampanoag to remember and reflect and hope that America will hashtag never forget. Do I celebrate Thanksgiving? No, I don't celebrate. But I do take advantage of the holiday and get together with family and friends to share a large meal without thinking of Thanksgiving in 1621. I think it is the same in many Native households. It is ironic that Thanksgiving takes place during hashtag American Indian and hashtag Alaska Native Heritage Month. And even greater irony is that more Americans today identify the day after Thanksgiving as hashtag Black Friday than as the National American Indian Heritage Day. This is from Dennis W. Zotig, Kiowa San Juan Pueblo, Santee Dakota Indian, and it was at the Smithsonian Magazine and hashtag teachers of Instagram.
Well put. Well put.
Yeah, very, very well worded.
Yes, that was.
And see that's a great page. Yeah, and to touch on that, it goes back to what you were saying earlier when you said that, you know, the pilgrims come over and said, well, these people don't believe the same thing as us, so they're less than us. So we even today, people look at Native Americans and think they're stupid, but they're very, I mean, I've met some very brilliant Native Americans who are extremely talented, extremely intelligent, and, you know, are well-spoken, you know, and, you know, as a culture, we have shit on them for so many fucking years.
Right.
Peanut Gallery, hold on.
This last Tuesday, we elected 2 women Native Americans to hold political office. I don't remember which states.
Did you hear all that?
Yeah, I did. 2?
Yeah.
2.
Oh.
Yeah. There might have been more, but I know it was at least 2.
Well, and that also, you know, you have the representative from Hawaii. I can't remember her name, but she is of, you know, Hawaiian nationality. I mean, she's that kind of Samoan, Filipino, whatever mix they have going there, you know. And it's good to see that them getting into places of power where they need to be to affect change. Right.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Hawaii, because that is another instance of the United States invading and conquering a land and dethroning the government that's already been established. Hawaii used to be a sovereign nation. They had a queen, and we went over there and invaded and did a backdoor shady dealing, and then all of a sudden now it's a state. Like,
right.
Hawaii, most people in Hawaii went, wait, no, we have a queen. We're Hawaii. We're
right.
a bunch of islands that, you know, I guess we're the United States now. Cool.
Yeah, but anyways, so, you know, I thought that post was really powerful because, you know, and again, I want to go back to talking about the misconstrued notions that we have of Native Americans.
Yeah.
You know, you and I saw it when we were kids. We played cowboys. Whenever you played cowboys and Indians, nobody wanted to be the Indians.
Right.
Because they always lost. You know, exactly. And, you know, we'd go around and we saw Indians as these people with these weird headdresses and dancing weird things and basically, you know, being pagans.
Right.
Which at that point when we were growing, because we both grew up in, you know, somewhat religious families, we thought paganism was bad. Which now, you know, we realize that, you know, Thanksgiving, like Halloween, like Christmas, is basically another pagan holiday that was stolen from them.
Right. It's just the Christians corrupted another holiday, and this time now we've corrupted. Uh, we've turned Thanksgiving into nothing more than just a day of shopping. Just it's a commercial enterprise now.
Yep.
And $1 billion spent every year on turkey for one day. That most of it gets thrown away because you're so sick and tired of eating it. And that's the other thing too. So going back to turkeys, a turkey that we know and eat today would not be recognizable from the turkeys that we had just when we were children.
Oh yeah.
They don't even look the same. The turkeys that we had when we were children looked like slightly larger chicken breasts, or not chicken breasts, but like whole chickens. Which nobody, how many people really make those anymore? A whole chicken.
Right.
You know? You just eat the parts of the chicken you like the
right.
dynamite.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because now they've been genetically modified to be these huge fucking monstrosities that barely fit in your fucking oven. They have to cook 17 fucking days.
Right. And not to mention the amount of people that burn their house down from, not understanding that you have to probably try to put the turkey in the deep fryer first when you fill it, so that you know how much you should put in there so it doesn't bubble over and then catch fire and burn their damn house down.
Right, because they're not smart enough to do it outside.
That too. Well, we'll just do it in the garage. It'll be fine. It's raining out there.
Right. And they got 7-degree burns on their arms from all the splash up.
Exactly. Now Timmy lives under the sewers because his skin is all gone, and all the kids call him Creature. So now he lives down there, and now he lives in the park and eats fish heads.
Yep. Hanging out with alligators.
Yeah. So exactly.
And the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
One of the things now that we're kind of into this whole indigenous people type of lore, I kind of wanted to touch base on the Pocahontas story.
Okay.
I know, and it doesn't really have much to do with Thanksgiving per se, but it still kind of has that whole misunderstood vibe between, like, we knew Squanto, but you didn't really know the seedy backstory of Squanto until, I mean, some people probably did, but until we did the research, I didn't know the man I didn't know he was captured and was a slave for 5 years, and then came back and was the only real reason that there was the Indians at the time, the Indigenous and the settlers, the only reason that they could talk to each other was this one man. And it never really dawned on me to ask, well, how the fuck can he talk to both? Well, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, same with me. I didn't know his backstory until I did my research.
So after I got to that one, I started thinking about other, different stories, and obviously the one that came out was Pocahontas. Now, Disney in, what was it, 95, had their movie with she falls in love with John Smith and blah blah blah, and people came out and went, what the fuck was that? So they were kind of confused by it. So they came out with the straight, like they did with all of their feature-length films. They came out with the straight to VHS, straight to DVD, the second version, where the second version is like she is Pocahontas 2. It came out in 98, where she goes, it's the journey to the new world. Now, it still had a lot of inaccuracies, but what happened, the reason that they had to do this is because Pocahontas marries a white man.
Yeah.
And ends up going over to England and basically kind of lives like royalty over there. She was, I'm trying to find she, okay. What?
Did she become a duchess or something like that?
Yeah. So what she did was there was a wealthy common Virginia owner. Okay, so he was a tobacco farmer named John Rolfe, was his
Okay.
name. And so the the village that they all lived in, their Jamestown, was because of the distance from that because of budget crisis and for the Virginia company and the where it was located, they were running out of supplies really fast, and investors were pulling out and leaving of the company and leaving them basically short of funds. So in 1614, Pocahontas would use her newfound knowledge to broker a peace treaty between the Indians and the settlers at that time while she was in captivity. Well, so she brokers this peace treaty so the Indians actually help the settlers make it through the winter at this point in time. Well, John Rolfe he was a very pious man. He had lost his wife and child during the journey to Virginia. And then afterwards, he requested permission from the governor and the chief to allow a Christian marriage between him and Pocahontas. So they eventually allowed them to get married. But after they got married, he gets called back to England. He brings her with him. They go back there, and it was really, they only used her at that point because when they could bring her over, they could show people that, oh yeah, the Indians over there, they're really nice, man. They help us out. They do this. And then she would say the same thing. So they used her as a bargaining chip to actually get more supplies and more money into the Virginia company and brought more food and stuff back to Virginia to help them out. So a couple of years later, Rolfe and them were going to go back to America. However, Pocahontas had respiratory problems, and in March of 1617, she ended up not being able to make the trip, and then she died of either tuberculosis, pneumonia, or scarlet fever. And then she died and was laid to rest over in England. But she did all of this, had 2 Disney movies, and she only lived to be 22 years old.
Holy shit.
Yeah. She got to meet the Queen and
that's amazing.
Yeah. She did all that shit and she was only 22 years old. So I wanted to bring that up because
now if you bring that up to like
no, I brought that up because it sounds like a storybook romance and everything, but she was loved by John Rolfe, but she was nothing more than just a bargaining chip for the company to broker a deal between the company and the natives at the time, and then brought to England to help raise money for the company so that they could continue to operate.
Right. Well, can you imagine like today having to get the government's approval to marry somebody? Well, you kind of have to. You have to apply for a marriage license and shit like that.
Right. But
it's so antiquated. It's just so stupid.
It really is.
All right.
It really is. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up because it was another incredible story of a Native American that we all know, but we may not know all the pieces of.
Right. And it's like I said earlier, there's the, history books version, and then there's the Native American version, and the truth probably lies somewhere in between.
Yes.
Because, let's call it as it is. Whether you're Native, whether you're whatever culture you are, we're all humans, so therefore we are all fallible. We're going to exaggerate things. We're going to exaggerate stories.
That's kind of that's life.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, I tell stories and then I embellish a little bit.
Right.
Well,
I mean, if you're a history book writer, you're not going to write, yeah, we came here and then we slaughtered them, kick their heads around the streets like soccer balls because, okay, now we look like shit.
Yeah. Right.
I'm going to say, we came here, everything was hunky-dory. We had a cool guy, Squanto, that helped us out. Oh, he wasn't a slave. You know. So, yeah. So you have to kind of look at both and try to pick pieces that make sense to you. Because when we didn't live that time, we're never going to know what truly happened.
Right. So let's make this a little lighter now. So,
okay.
So we know that there's a lot of bullshit around Thanksgiving, but like in the post that you read, that was very eloquent. It was very well read, but he still says it's still a day that him and his family get together. So even if you don't like the ideas that started Thanksgiving and what happened to the Native Americans that were here and what we did to them, what we're still doing to them to a certain extent, you still should, it's a day to reflect and hang out with family and just, you still get the day off for most people. Like I saw a thing here where it was like 78% of America actually has the day off on Thanksgiving.
Right. Unless you work at a gas station or something like that, who have no choice but to be open, so they can give gas to people that are traveling.
Yes.
And I feel for those people. Or you work in a casino like I did, you didn't get that fucking day off.
Oh, well, no. Well, okay, so you worked in an Indian casino. So do you think they're going to shut down for that day? I don't fucking think so.
Well, there's no casino in this country, whether it's Indian owned or white owned or whatever, that shuts down that day.
Exactly. But there's still some traditions that happen every day on that day. You can always see the Lions lose. You can watch the Cowboys and the Bears play.
That's a guarantee.
Yep. There's generally you get Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, and there's the Macy's Day Parade, which was kind of funny because growing up, I remember going out
to Macy's Day Parade.
Yeah, going out to Grandpa's house. That parade was always on, and we just sit there and think, okay, you guys are still watching. Why the fuck are you watching a parade? There's nothing else on TV, even though there's only like 4 channels, but not all 4 channels are playing the fucking parade.
Right.
But they started in 2011. I thought this was kind of funny because a U.S. Army serviceman dressed in a turkey costume and leads the Kabul satellite turkey chase 10K run on Thanksgiving. So what they do is they have somebody dress up as a turkey. He's the one that started it, apparently. They dress up in a turkey, and then they'd run a 10K race. And you have to keep pace with the turkey. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That is.
Then radio stations around the country and probably around the world play the 18-minute monologue by Arlo Guthrie called Alice's Restaurant. Now, it happened to Arlo on a Thanksgiving, and he was in this restaurant.
One more time. You broke. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. We had some technical difficulties.
All right. So on the radio, a lot of radio stations will play the 18-minute monologue by Arlo Guthrie called Alice's Restaurant. Now, it's a story about him in a restaurant on Thanksgiving in 1965. And they play this, and it's actually pretty funny. And I actually have a copy of it here on vinyl. So those of you watching the video, you can see that I'm holding it up. It has the background for the whole episode. But it's a really funny story. But the first time I ever heard it, I was actually in a car driving to the grandparents' house for Thanksgiving. And we are trying to get us live again because the ghosts are back. The ghosts are back and they're gonna fuck with us shit because
Yeah,
the,
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
There you are. All right. I
Okay.
can hear you the whole time.
Oh, sweet. Nice. Rush Limbaugh actually had an annual tradition where he did the real Thanksgiving story, which I was never really a fan of his, so I never really gave a shit, and I never even looked up to see what he talked about. But then one of the things since 1947, the National Turkey Federation presents the United States of America with one live turkey and two dressed turkeys. And since then, every year, the president would give a pardon to that turkey, and that turkey would not die.
Oh, nice.
And they've been doing that for years and years and years. And I don't know if Trump is still doing it or not, but he doesn't seem to be the one that goes along with these type of traditions. It is one of the most traveled.
Right. Well, you're missing a vital one. You forgot about the John Madden's mutated turkey with 17 legs that he would give out.
Yes, the
drumstick award to a player that day.
Yes.
And who was his co-announcer? What was his name?
Pat Summerall.
Pat Summerall. And Pat Summerall had to be drunk every time he worked with John, because John would drive him up the fucking wall by stating, because John was Captain Obvious. He'd be like, well, when the quarterback goes back and he throws the ball, well, that's called a pass. Sorry, not my best John Madden imitation.
Well, you see here, Pat, what they're doing there, they're playing the game of football. No shit? Really? No, one of the darkest days in American history was when they made Pat Summerall stop drinking in the booth, because they used to do Monday Night Football together, and Pat Summerall actually was a big drinker, and he used to actually drink in the booth,
right?
Because he was dealing with John fucking Madden every day.
Yes, that would drive me. I would have to drink. The only way I could tolerate that fucker would be drunk.
Yeah.
But then again, when I get drunk, I kind of don't hold back words, so that probably wouldn't be a good thing.
Yeah,
Granted, if you listen to our podcast, I don't really hold back words much anyways.
Right, and I don't drink on this, so.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that's another tradition that I can recall, because we used to see it all the time as kids, because John Madden was one of the announcers all the time, and that's something that we would watch, and him give away that was his MVP of the day, would get turkey legs.
Yes.
And I'm surprised he didn't eat every one of them. But so I'm sure you have. I know you're looking at your notes, so you have other traditions. Go ahead with those.
Well, that's really the main ones that they're out here. I was trying to scour through here, but what am I trying to say? I guess that's really the main traditions that we all have. I mean, everybody's got their own. There's the mud bowl. People that always have backyard games, football games with the family, stuff like that. Like we said, our sport, and it was a sport, it was a card game called Spoons, where blood was shed.
Many times.
People were unconscious.
Your mom had a dent in her forehead for years from a spoon.
Right, because it shot up and bam, right off her forehead. So we had our own.
Our grandma had these 12-inch
fingernails, and she always painted them red.
Yep.
So the nail polish is always red, so you couldn't see the blood on them.
Right. Yeah. So
part,
like you're saying, we have. Are you still with me?
There we are. Okay.
There you go. All right.
So that with Thanksgiving, it's really it's a lot of places you usually get, a lot of places will give them Thursday and Friday off. And
Right.
as we all know, Thanksgiving is that Thursday. Then Friday is what's known as Black Friday, which I've always found this funny. I actually saw somebody say, "Why is it called Black Friday? That's racist." No, it's an accounting term, you fucking moron. It's like
Right.
you want books to be in the black. It's an accounting term, it has nothing to do with race. But anyway, but then in Canada in '92, they actually had a contrasting movement, which was called Buy Nothing Day, where they would try to, or they wanted people just stay home and let's just hang out with family and don't go shopping. The day after Thanksgiving is
That
also
would be.
the day after Thanksgiving is also Native American Heritage Day, which is we talked about before and was in the guy mentions in that post, which we've co-opted to make it
Right.
the most commercial day in our country. Then Small Business Saturday is Saturday after the Friday, which you're supposed to go down and find small local establishments and do shopping there, which I like to do because I live in a quaint little town that's got a bunch of little shops that I like to go to, and they're not all bars. Then Sunday is just a day of nothing. Nobody really has anything for Sunday. But Cyber Monday is the following Monday, where you can go to pretty much any website and you get some awesome deals. It's the best thing to do for your shopping because you can have the shit shipped right to where it needs to go. You don't have to even fucking touch it, see it. You can just track it online. And I love it. But then the Tuesday after that is Giving Tuesday, which is a day that you're supposed to give back to your community, whether you volunteer stuff, send a check to your local food bank, and do that. If speaking of food banks, real quick, and because going with Thanksgiving, a lot of people like to do a can drive and try to sponsor a family, which are glorious things to do. But remember this when you're doing it. $1 goes a lot farther for a food bank than that old can of tuna that you're not going to eat. Because they can't give it to the family if the sell-by date is beyond today. So if it was supposed to be sold by tomorrow and give it to them today, then they have to throw it away at their expense too, because then they have to pay to get rid of all these old canned goods. So what you want to do is you want to send your food bank money, because a food bank can buy from the grocery stores at the same buying and purchasing power that a grocery store has. So that $1 where it may get you a can of tuna on sale, they could buy a dozen cans of tuna. So just send them money. Don't do can drives. So that's part of what.
And I didn't know all that, and I'm glad you brought that up because it never dawned on me. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. If they have basically the power to buy stuff from a grocery store at cost of what the grocery store gets it from the distributor, yeah, you're better off giving them money.
Exactly. And my figures may not be right. They may not buy a dozen cans of tuna, but they can still, your dollar goes farther shopping in their hands than it will in your own. Exactly.
And that's also, if you have the time, go down and volunteer at a soup kitchen or something like that. I volunteer a lot of my time, but I volunteer in like the art community, where I'm going out helping people spread art and stuff like that because it's my passion.
Nice.
But I'm also thinking about, because I just recently found out that a friend of mine's not a real close friend, but he's homeless and it's winter here. It's cold. We had our first snow 2 days ago.
Yikes.
And so my wife and I were talking about what we can do to try to help this guy out. But right now he's staying in like shelters and stuff like that I didn't even know we had in this town. So seeing that have that stuff available gives me hope, you know?
Right.
And that's, you know, I sat here and I knocked on Christianity, I knocked on religion and stuff like that. But I do have to give props because it's churches that are putting these things on.
Exactly. And if you do have, if you want to know where you can volunteer and you can find places, your best bet is, you know, call a church that's close to you, and they'll have all the information that you need on who does what and where. And that's probably your best bet for starting off. You may get on a mailing list at that point. That's part and parcel for it. They'll try to convert you, but a lot of churches do a lot of good in this stuff. And one of my brother's best friends growing up, him and his family, the Almonds were their names. Every year for Thanksgiving, they would cook hundreds of turkeys with their church, and they would hand out free dinners to people. And that's what they did every Thanksgiving. And his parents are, you know, up there in years now, so they don't really get around a lot. But so him, his brother, and his sister still do this to this day. They run a kitchen, and I think he said they did over 150 turkeys last year that they break up into, you know, into meals, and the people come to to this thing, and they give out free meals all day long. It's a wonderful thing that they've been doing forever.
My wife just informed me that she's not sure. She said you can call either 211 or 411 for help, and they will help direct you to these areas.
Okay.
So I didn't know that, but that's good to know. And I'm sorry, I don't know which one it is, but I'm sure you could just try dialing.
Just don't dial 911 to ask what soup kitchen you can volunteer at.
411? Yeah, because 411 used to be information, so it's probably 211.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are options available out there for you if you don't have a place to stay. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like my wife and I talked about, well, our middle son doesn't sleep in his bedroom, and we were thinking, well, you know, we could let our friend stay in his room in the basement, but I think we have a hard enough time right now just supporting ourselves, trying to support another person on top of that.
Right. And the other thing too, it doesn't have to be food. You can find, if you have old clothes that is still in really good condition. You know, we go through clothes at an alarming rate in this country. Yep. Like I said, I work in a school, and one year we sent out to this, we gave away all the lost and found after school was done. We send them out to this place called the Ark, which gives them to like battered women's shelters and other places like that. And they would give us $0.25 per pound. They would donate $0.25 that went to the parent-teacher organization. But we had 480 pounds of lost and found items that were collected. Wow. This is after everybody came through and picked up the stuff that we'd set it all out and let them come through and, yeah, that's my shirt, that's my shoe. You know, you get one shoe. What the fuck? How do you lose one shoe? But anyway, we would donate this stuff. We would give it to them. They would give us they would donate money to our parent-teacher organization for stuff that we would normally just throw away. So there's a lot of schools out there that are getting involved, and they're helping. They're donating them to churches, and churches are going there. But you can donate. You don't have to go through a church or anything. You can contact these. They're not just all women's shelters. You can contact any of these shelters, and as long as their clothes are in good condition, they'll take them.
Right. My wife said that her school does the same thing.
Oh, perfect. See, so there's 2 schools in this country that we know of that do this, and so we're trying to help people. Right.
You know, we may sound like, you know, assholes when you listen to our podcast, but the thing is we are passionate, and that comes across as asshole-ish.
Right.
But we do want to help people. And so we do hope that some of the stuff that we say in our podcast will actually reach some people. I mean, we've talked about depression in past ones. We said, seek help. And this is another thing. If you're having financial difficulties, there are services available to you. So many people are afraid to call the electric company and say, I know my bill's due. I don't have the money for it. You'd be surprised at how quick they are to offer you options.
To be honest, they don't want to shut your power off.
No, they make no money doing that.
If you're there's things out there. As long as we have the Democrats, there'll still be some kind of programs out there for you. So seek help, find help, and support any local Indian casino to help.
Yep.
Because they need your help too.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, I think that we've been talking about this for quite a while, so I think we should wrap this up. So, in summary, we talked both versions of Thanksgiving. We talked about the Disney history book Cookie Cutter, and then we talked about the dark side of Thanksgiving with the slaughters and basically genocide. Because as we know through history, all that led to the Trail of Tears and all that other shit that someday we'll probably get into. But
yes,
you want to add to that?
We talked about traditions. We talked about there, and I think probably if you take nothing from this podcast, then you should take the fact that you should have some level of guilt, and you should actually volunteer or help people somehow in any way that you can. Any little bit helps. If you change the life of one person, if you put a smile on one person's face, that person's smile may put a smile on somebody else's face. And one person can, in fact, then change the world.
Right. It's a chain reaction. It's raising your vibration.
And just remember, the world is the viewpoint of one person. So if you can change the outlook on life for one person, you in fact did change the world.
There you go. All right. So with that, we will wrap up tonight's episode of the Bunny Rabbit's Hole. So,
all right. So insert tagline here. I, of course, am Jason, and you are?
Of course, I am Craig.
All right. Of course is our first names. We do have those odd last names that we talked about last week. So I think we're going to call it a do.
All right. And tune in next week for our next podcast, which we'll leave for a surprise until next week.
Exactly.
Bye. Bye.